The first time I saw her, I almost didn't recognize the figure cloaked in starlight. It wasn't that she was physically unremarkable, far from it, but the aura she radiated made the air itself tremble. Her name was Lasara, and she was the heir to the Cerinthian throne, ruler of a star system that spanned 5 inhabited planets. People whispered that she was untouchable, unbending, and entirely immune to the ordinary affections of the universe. Yet here she was, standing on the edge of the gravity platform aboard the flagship Eclipser and staring at me with eyes that made the void outside seem dim by comparison. I, Jaren Solis, had been a mercenary for nearly a decade, drifting from one forgotten corner of the galaxy to the next. I had fought pirates in the Zirin Nebula, defended smugglers from interstellar police, and even survived an ambush orchestrated by a rogue artificial intelligence that had mistaken me for a starship engineer. But nothing in my life had prepared me for the assignment Lasara offered. "You want to survive me, don't you?" she asked, her voice as smooth as graviton silk. There was no accusation, only a challenge that made my pulse quicken. I survive," I said, trying to sound confident. "I failed." She smiled, and it wasn't cruel or mocking. It was calculating, a precise mixture of amusement and danger. "Then you'll need to become my champion," she said. "Compete for me against the other warriors I've summoned. Only the victor earns my trust. Only the victor earns my heart." I swallowed. I didn't know whether she was serious or simply toying with me. But the weight of the Cerinthian throne was not something to dismiss. This was no game. It was life and death, played on a cosmic scale. Chapter 1. The Gathering of Champions. The hall where Lasara summoned us was enormous, spanning the size of 3 starships parked end to end. Its walls were transparent, offering a view of the swirling gas clouds of a nearby nebula, punctuated by distant suns blinking like fireflies. One by one, the other champions arrived, each more imposing than the last. There was Kor, a genetically modified ex-soldier whose muscles could tear through titanium plating, Valex, a cybernetic assassin whose entire body hummed with hidden blades, and Thera, a telekinetic who could crush a starship bridge with a mere gesture. They all looked at me like I had wandered into the wrong arena. I wasn't enhanced. I had no cybernetic implants, no psychic training, no superhuman strength. I had only my wits, my reflexes, and the stubborn refusal to die. "Do you feel out of place?" Lasara asked, gliding between us. She stopped in front of me, her hair drifting as though weightless, and her hand brushed a control panel. "That's good. The others will underestimate you." That's exactly what I want. The first challenge was simple in theory but brutal in execution: survival through the Obsidian Gauntlet, a series of shifting corridors filled with traps designed to test reflexes, strategy, and courage. As the gauntlet began, flames erupted from the walls, laser turrets emerged from hidden panels, and the floor shifted like a living creature. Kor barreled ahead, smashing walls aside, only to trigger a sequence of collapsing ceilings. Valex danced between laser grids with mechanical precision, avoiding danger but missing critical triggers that could deactivate parts of the gauntlet. Thera floated above the corridors, moving debris with thought alone, but she miscalculated the timing of a collapsing platform and fell 2 levels down, nearly impaled by a spike wall. I stayed back, watching, learning, and timing my moves. I ran, ducked, and slid, using every instinct I had honed from years of survival. I didn't rush. I didn't rely on strength. I relied on observation. And somehow, miraculously, I emerged at the end of the gauntlet first, dirty and bruised but alive. Lasara's gaze met mine once again. "Impressive," she said. And for the first time, her smile hinted at something softer, something almost tender. Chapter 2. The Trial of Shadows. The second challenge was far more subtle. Lasara led us to a planet draped in permanent twilight, its forests blackened and luminous fungi casting ghostly light across the twisted trees. "This is the Trial of Shadows," she explained. "You must retrieve the Heartstone from the Temple of Whispering Echoes. But beware, the forest will reflect your fears, manipulate your senses, and confront you with your darkest truths." I had encountered mind-bending environments before, but nothing like this. The shadows weren't shadows. They were projections, illusions crafted from our deepest anxieties. I saw my family, long dead, screaming for me to return. I saw entire starships destroyed by mistakes I hadn't yet made. I saw Lasara herself, turned against me, accusing me of cowardice and failure. Most of the champions crumbled. Kor attempted to fight the shadows and failed, smashing the illusionary figures only to stumble into a real trap. Valak shut down, unable to distinguish between enemy and phantom. Thera vanished into the mist, lost in the labyrinth of her own mind. I pressed on, speaking to the shadows as if they were real people. I acknowledged their existence, understood them, and let them guide me without letting them control me. Eventually, I reached the Temple of Whispering Echoes, a monolith pulsating with a soft golden light. Inside rested the Heartstone, hovering above an obsidian pedestal. As I touched it, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Calm. Clarity. A singular focus that made all the fear and noise fall away. When I emerged from the forest, Lasara was waiting, leaning against a crystalline railing. "Few make it this far," she said softly. "Fewer still emerge unchanged." "Changed?" I asked, brushing off dirt. Her eyes met mine with an intensity that made the stars outside look dull. "You've faced the void inside yourself and survived. That is worth more than strength, more than skill. That is what I desire in a champion." Chapter 3. The Duel of Fates. The final challenge was a duel, one-on-one combat, in an arena that hovered above a planet engulfed in violent storms. The wind tore at our clothes, lightning cracked across the skies, and the platform beneath us shifted with every gust. My opponent, Lasara's personal champion for the last 5 cycles, a man named Rylan who had never lost a fight. His strikes were precise, deadly, and fast, but I had learned patience and observation. The duel lasted longer than anything I had endured before. I dodged, parried, and countered, feeling the rhythm of his movements as though he were a machine powered by predictability. I exploited small errors, timed my strikes, and eventually, after what felt like hours, I disarmed him and held him at my mercy. Lasara descended from her elevated throne, her gaze fixed on me. "You have survived my champion," she said, "and thus, you have survived me." Rylan bowed his head. "You are the new champion," he admitted. Chapter 4. A Heart Promised. It was then, amidst the echoes of the storm and the charged atmosphere of the arena, that Lasara stepped forward. She placed a hand on my chest, not commanding, not threatening, but gentle. "You did not merely survive the trials," she said. "You understood them, you adapted, and you persisted. That is why I promised my heart." I wanted to speak, to protest, to insist that this was all impossible, but her eyes stopped me. They were filled with sincerity, something rare in someone as powerful as Lasara. "If you survive me," she whispered, "you may have it." And you have. The declaration didn't come with grandiose gestures or dramatic proclamations. It was quiet, intimate, and real. A promise sealed not by ceremony, but by acknowledgement, by trust, and by the fire of the trials we had endured together. We left the arena together, walking side by side, past the swirling storms and twinkling stars. Lasara didn't need to speak of politics, power, or the throne. In that moment, all that mattered was survival, understanding, and the fragile, beautiful gift of a heart promised and received. Epilogue: Beyond the Stars. The galaxy continued its endless dance. Wars raged, alliances shifted, and countless worlds remained untouched by the dramas of kings and mercenaries. But Lasara and I, we had found a singular truth. Survival was not merely about strength or skill. It was about the courage to face the impossible, the patience to endure, and the willingness to claim something truly priceless. I, Jaren Solis, the unlikely mercenary, became Lasara's champion, not because I was the strongest, fastest, or most cunning, but because I dared to see beyond the trials, beyond fear, and beyond myself. And in return, I received a promise that was worth more than the stars themselves: her heart. For in a universe that could crush worlds and swallow suns, that promise was a rare and luminous thing. The storm that had raged during my final duel with Rylan had faded into a quiet twilight. The platform hovered above the planet, now bathed in the soft glow of 2 distant suns. Lasara stood beside me, her hand brushing lightly against my arm. For the first time, I saw her not as a ruler or a challenge, but as a person, complex, guarded, and yet astonishingly real. "You fought well," she said quietly, her eyes reflecting the fading lightning like mirrors. But surviving the trials was only part of it. What comes next is the true test. I frowned. Next? I thought this was it. I won. I survived your champion. You survived the arena, she interrupted, smiling faintly. But the galaxy doesn't stop for champions or mercenaries. Our lives are still bound to the shifting currents of politics, rebellion, and war. If you are to truly be my champion, you must survive me, not just in combat, but in the reality of what comes after victory. The words were heavy, but I didn't flinch. I had already faced the gauntlet, the trial of shadows, and Rylan's sword. Whatever came next would be nothing compared to that crucible. The return to Sarinthia. We traveled together back to her flagship, Eclipser, and eventually to her home planet, Sarinthia Prime, a world of sprawling crystal cities, oceans that shimmered with bioluminescent life, and forests older than most recorded galaxies. The people of her realm regarded me with curiosity and suspicion. A mercenary, a stranger, now walking beside their queen? Many whispered that I was unworthy. Others feared I would betray her. Lasara, however, ignored them all. She introduced me simply. "This is Jaren Solis, my champion, my equal." The title felt foreign in my mouth, but I accepted it. I had never wanted power, wealth, or glory. Yet there was something profoundly grounding in being trusted completely, without reservation, by someone like Lasara. We spent weeks navigating court politics, treaties with neighboring systems, and small uprisings that threatened stability. Every step I took beside her revealed more of her mind, her vision for her people, and the burdens she carried. And with each challenge, our bond deepened, not merely as ruler and champion, but as equals, as companions, as 2 people learning to trust one another in a galaxy that seemed determined to test us at every turn. The Heartstone's secret. One night, I asked her about the Heartstone from the Trial of Shadows. "Why did you make me retrieve it?" I asked, tracing the faint scar across my palm from the gauntlet. Lasara's expression softened. "The Heartstone is more than a prize. It is a mirror of one's soul. It reveals who you truly are when nothing else can. Few see themselves clearly, fewer still survive that revelation. You did. That is why I offered my heart. You didn't just survive my trials. You survived yourself." I couldn't hide a small laugh, half in relief and half in disbelief. So, all that death, fear, and near murder was a personality test. She chuckled. In a way, yes, but it was also necessary. The galaxy does not reward the reckless or the naive. And neither do I. The peaceful revolution. Months passed. As Lasara's champion, I took part in missions that went beyond battle, negotiating treaties, quelling uprisings without bloodshed, and teaching new recruits to think strategically rather than relying solely on brute force. I learned that true power lay not in victory alone, but in the ability to protect, inspire, and endure. The people began to accept me, not as a stranger or a warrior, but as part of their queen's inner circle. I wasn't just a bodyguard. I became a trusted advisor, someone who Lasara could rely on when the decisions were too heavy for one mind alone. And slowly, quietly, love began to grow. Not dramatic or shouted across courts, but subtle, steady, and unyielding. The promise fulfilled. One evening, standing on the edge of Sarinthia Prime's floating cliffs, watching two moons rise over the ocean, Lasara turned to me. "You have survived me," she said, echoing the words from the arena. But this time, her tone was different. Softer. Warmer. "And you have endured everything that comes with me. My responsibilities, my enemies, my fears. My heart was promised if you survived. Now, it is given." I swallowed, speechless. The enormity of her words settled over me. In a universe full of deception, betrayal, and fleeting allegiances, someone had truly trusted me with something irreplaceable, her heart. I reached for hers, and our hands met, intertwining not as queen and champion, but as equals, as companions, as something that neither trials nor galaxies could destroy. A new chapter. In the months that followed, we forged a new path together. Lasara began reforming the Interplanetary Council, advocating for peace across neighboring systems, while I helped strengthen defenses and train a new generation of warriors, champions who understood courage, strategy, and loyalty. Evenings were spent on quiet balconies, discussing stars, dreams, and the strange, unpredictable beauty of life. We laughed, we argued, we planned, and we survived, not because the galaxy had no dangers, but because we faced them together. And in the quiet moments, I often reflected on the trials, the shadows, the duels, and the gauntlets. None of them had been about proving my worth. They had been about showing me the depths of my own resilience and the capacity of another person to believe in me completely. I looked at Lasara, her eyes reflecting the twin moons above, and realized that survival wasn't just about living. Survival was about trust, courage, love, and the willingness to claim something extraordinary when it finally appeared. In a universe that had swallowed stars and crushed worlds, I had found something rarer than any cosmic treasure. A heart promised, a bond forged in fire and shadow, and a love strong enough to endure beyond time, trials, and galaxies. And so, I remained her champion, not merely of combat, but of life, love, and every uncertain tomorrow. The stars above continued their eternal dance, but for the first time, I felt like I had found my place among them, not as a wandering mercenary, but as someone who mattered. Someone who had earned not just survival, but a heart promised and received.